Welcome, everyone, from all over the world. Thank you for coming. The conference is being recorded, so be sure to smile for the camera. Lofty goals, ambitions, and the desire to succeed, in other words, greatness, is a normal human condition. Inner greatness exists in all of us. However, it's suppressed through years of misguided educational, social, and cultural teachings. This causes us to lose income and earnings and happiness throughout our lives and careers. We're taught to think greatness belongs to someone else. It's outside. That we are ordinary, an imposter. Instead of focusing on our own uniqueness and inner greatness, we are taught to compare ourselves to others. And we're told, you're not normal. Well, I don't know what normal is. We're told, why can't you be like them? That's insanity. Your uniqueness is your value. You are a global supply of one. You are a monopoly. Why would you ever suppress that or change that? Greatness can never happen if you lose yourself in the process. No one is born extraordinary. If you examine anyone that you consider extraordinary, you will find that they chose to do a few extra things. They showed up at places others wouldn't. They practiced and developed their unique gifts to become the best in the world in what they do. Of course, they made mistakes, but they kept on. They dared to be themselves and not fit into any mold. Instead of playing someone else's game that might have been rigged, they changed the game. They created their own game. Greatness is simple. Sprinkle your joy and your gifts to anything you do. Set yourself free and add your personality and your unique touch. All of a sudden, you will define the job in your unique image instead of letting the job define you. That's how you become irreplaceable. I have never done a job according to what the previous person did. I also did every job in a manner no one else could. When I left, for whatever reason, layoff, resignation, promotion, the negative financial impact on the organization was huge. Today, at this event, our awesome speakers will share their journeys with you. It will take courage to share because when we share, we reveal our human vulnerabilities. However, such sharing is also empowering. You will control your vulnerability instead of letting it control you. You will see everyone is unique. That's what makes them valuable. After our speakers share their stories, we will open up the floor for audience questions, comments, and feedback. And now, I am truly honored to bring onto the stage our opening keynote speaker, the fabulous Lana Fabb, spelled with 2 B's, just for that extra oomph. And she's flying in via Zoom Airlines all the way from the United Kingdom with the speech, Fabb by name. Fabb by name, Lana Fabb.
Thank you. So what comes to your mind when you think of London? Kings and queens, castles and palaces, right? It's fabulous. So when I set up home on the outskirts of London, I made sure everyone living with me could enjoy a life of luxury. And that's why I built Cluckingham Palace for my pet hens. We have Gwyneth Poultry, Chickless Cage, Maggie Hatcher, and many, many more. They are literally the talk of the street. I also have a cat, Princess Roxy, who also lives in luxury, and she has a crown for a bed. Spoilt much? The chickens, they lay so many eggs that I donate them to the neighbours, to the local church for evening suppers for those less fortunate, to make sure that they get a hot meal. I also run a food bank to support the local area. You'll often see me walking around the streets with piles of egg boxes, delivering them to neighbours ready for breakfast. My hens have gotten so popular that we have regular visitors coming over to see them. And on most weekends, we have visitors coming to give them a cuddle or feed them some sweet corn. My garden is like an oasis for children and adults wanting to come and see. In actual fact, I should probably charge them an entry fee. You would be amazed at the amount of people that contact me saying, can I come and pick up your chicken? I don't know, it must be a thing. People want to hold a hen, but obviously they are more than welcome. The only poor thing that my chickens can't have is a boyfriend. There is no dating in Cluckingham Palace, as we are not allowed to keep a cockerel. And to be honest, I'm actually quite pleased about that. Nobody wants to hear them arguing over whose turn it is to have a romantic meal at the picnic table. And yes, the hens do have their own miniature picnic table, which they have their lunch on and have a little natter. So personally, I'm living up to my name. My life is fab. Professionally, not so much. I was stagnating in my role. I was stuck in a rut, but I didn't know it, or I didn't really want to see it. Then a great friend of mine who had read and benefited from the book gifted me a copy of Bring Inner Greatness Out. I will be honest, I ignored this for some time because I did not believe anything needed to change, or perhaps I wasn't ready to accept it. One day, I decided to respect my friend and I opened the book. I cannot explain the change in mindset, but suddenly I realized that my professional life was not fab. I was what other people wanted me to be, and I was not authentic. I was undervalued and underutilized. I was very comfortable in my role, but I wasn't happy and I wasn't challenged. So I spoke about my aspirations with my manager. He understood that I wanted more and there was nothing more they could offer me. The job I wanted, it didn't exist. I must do the same role, play the corporate handbook, be what they want me to be, and wait for a million years to get something I wasn't sure I wanted or even existed. And I felt really sad about this. I had given this company 9 years of my heart and soul, and they didn't want to help me grow. To be honest, I found it quite insulting. So I handed in my 3 months notice, a bold move, but it was a kick that I needed to take back control. Yes, I did panic, but I calmed down after a few sleepless nights. And then suddenly people started reaching out to me. They were learning that I was leaving a role I'd been very good at for 9 years, and they were getting in touch. I was offered jobs and interviews. And during all of these conversations, I explained the value I would bring, what I wanted in return from them. Happily, I joined a new company in a far senior role, with a salary I negotiated based on the value that I would bring to the organization. Honestly, it was the most empowered I'd ever felt professionally. Self-belief, drive, and ambition are always a work in progress. I don't have all the answers, nor will I ever. But thanks to the support I have received from the amazing doctor himself, and by being able to refer to both the audio and the physical copies of the book, I always have a reference point so I can confidently keep moving forwards and keep growing. I am now Fabb in name in my personal life and in my professional life. It's a fabulous situation to be in. And now I have the great pleasure of inviting Michael Saine to the stage with his speech, Sith by Necessity. Michael Saine, Sith by Necessity.
Thank you so much, Lana. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Doctor, fellow speakers. I'd like to personally thank you all for coming to the Green Inner Greatness Global Conference 2023. Without the support of the people watching and without the audience, we couldn't do as much as we have, or we couldn't share as much as we are sharing about where we all are in our personal journey. But I'd like to start my speech with someone else's personal journey, a story, if you will, I read. When I was merely 8 or 9, Michael Jordan was woken up at 3 a.m. Knock, 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 knock on the door. Some reporter was waking Michael Jordan up out of the bed. At this time, all he was a journeyman rookie who was an explosive talent. But already Jordan knew something that we didn't know. Michael Jordan showed up in a 3-piece suit at 3 a.m. in the morning when they knocked at the door. I'm sure you guys can all know that it wouldn't work out for you if you knocked at my door at 3 a.m. But he did, because he understood what personal branding is. To continue on discussing that, and to continue discussing Michael Jordan specifically, when we think of the idea of be like Mike, just do it, and all these other things, this young man who was once getting the door knocked on by reporters transcended basketball and made millions through personal branding. Corporate companies manage lots of money, millions and billions of dollars per year on the concept of their branding. So why can't you have a brand? Why can't I have a brand? There's no reason that I shouldn't be. A mere 7 years ago, I was a carpenter with the Navy. I was down in a dirt hole covered in mud. And I decided I wanted something different. So I threw down my hammer. I looked at them all. I was like, I had enough of you people. I'm going out to be a hacker. I want to be a professional hacker. And they laughed. They're like, no way can you do that. Immediately, I used my GI Bill. I came in and I took a bunch of classes and I worked on it because I needed first to establish the baseline. Remember, there was no be like Mike if Mike wasn't scoring 30 points a night. And I thought a lot about that as I moved forward in college. Every second. I was so blessed to have the book's author as one of my instructors at my college. I was introduced conceptually idea, and I just tucked it in the back of my head at that point. And then I thought a lot about that. As I grew, I got a master's of cybersecurity technology with an emphasis in penetration testing, which really just means I have a bunch of certificates behind me and I'm some sort of super technical person, but that's not a brand, is it? There are millions of people getting degrees in cybersecurity every day. What separates me and what makes me different? And how can I tell an employer in 5 minutes or less what makes me different and special? So I sat down like Winnie the Pooh. Think, Pooh Bear, think, think, think. And I thought back. As a child, it had been a happy habit to run around hacking and working on things. I was one of those children that got in a lot of trouble, a Bart Simpson, if you will. But I already had a background, and it was something that I already had spent my entire life working with. The certificates, the degrees weren't just something that I went to a class and learned. I actually knew what I was doing. So how do I communicate this? And I thought, well, it's quite simple. I'm a bad boy. Why not be the bad boy? And if you've ever watched Star Wars, which most nerds know, most people know when we're discussing cybersecurity immediately about Star Wars, the Sith are a race of people. They are a group that dedicate themselves to dark side arts. I'm like, oh, almost like what I'm trying to do. I'm ethical, but at the end of the day, I'm still really the bad guy deep down underneath. So I started. I had a piece. Obviously, when you're advertising yourself to a company, you can't move forward and just say, I'm a bad guy, hire me. Nobody wants that. It was a year after I graduated college that I was listening to Keen Lear, and I heard the term villain by necessity, a reference to the idea that sometimes rough men must make decisions in order to keep others safe. Oh my God, I have it. My brand, Sith by necessity. I bring to you a product that I've learned by growing through the dark side and doing dark side acts in order to keep you safe. So I began establishing a brand around that. I began building a newsletter around that. I'm actually working on a book around that. When I introduce myself, I'm able to say in 30 seconds why you should invest in me. And I made that the center of my personal brand. A Star Wars joke is the center of my personal brand. But in those 3 words, just like Mike, in those 3 words, I was able to communicate something, a greater conceptual idea that brings interest to people. Today, it's kind of funny because at this time, I'm not working as an ethical hacker. At this time, I'm a social media manager. It turned out that the ideas that I learned from the book were so persuasive that other people actually hire me to handle their branding too now. The same skills I use as a hacker, I use as a social media manager in order to look at the algorithm, move through the different things, and do everything that I need to promote that page and put it in a place where it's number 1. So at this point, not only did I prove that I was the ethical penetration tester that I wanted to when I started, I've actually taken that brand and moved forward past that ethical penetration tester to have other people flock to me to design their brands. And that is what happens when you bring out inner greatness. That is what happens when you take a brand. That is what happens when you put that brand out there. And that is what happens when you attract people and opportunities to you. So I'm going to ask you this. What's your personal brand? What words sum you up? What makes people understand who you are and what you have to offer the table? With that being said, I'd like to say I'm quite interested to be able to hear our next speaker. I am thrilled beyond belief. I am thrilled to present Beyond Sanity and invite Ellie J to the stage with the speech, Embracing Insanity. Ellie J.
I have a long history of being called crazy. The very first person to remark upon my sanity was my own grandmother when I was roughly 2 years old. See, at the time, I was going through a phase where I would walk everywhere I went on my tiptoes, as though I was wearing a pair of tiny miniature stilettos. She turned to my mother when she first saw me do this and said, "I'm sure that child is crazy." But she was laughing at the time. Now, I don't remember this occasion, it may surprise you to learn, but I do remember many, many similar ones. My classmates all thought I was incredibly weird when, aged around 9, I pointed out that if you were to take one of the purple pogo balls that we had on the school playground and remove the ring that was around the outside for standing on, you would be left with a sort of purple rubber oval, a little bit like a rugby ball or an American football, but with rounder ends. And that if somebody was to hold this up around here when our teacher was getting angry, the resemblance would increase with every breath he took, because his bald head was almost the exact same shape, and he had a tendency to get more and more purple in the face as he shouted. This may have caused some remarks about my mental well-being at the time, but it was more than worth it to see how everybody would then smirk whenever they saw one of these pogo balls in his presence. Some of the older children did actually go as far as to pull the plastic rings off, which only added to the hilarity. It was around this time I realized being called crazy was a good thing, People might be completely baffled by those who thought differently to them, but they were also entertained and amused by them. So I began to lean into this. Whenever I was at school, I would take on various acts of weirdness that made people who would never normally bother interacting with me incredibly entertained. I remember one such game that earned me the friendship of all the older and, by the social standards of primary school, cooler children was to allow them to chase me around the playground with blades of grass while I screamed at them. Now, even now, I have no idea where this game came from, but it was just one other way that being completely different to them and not really caring whether it made me seem crazy could get me friends and earn me laughs. A few years after this, I discovered the internet. Now, if I am actually insane, this probably didn't help. But it was telling that all of my screen names at the time had some variation of crazy in them somewhere. I'll say no more about my past internet identities just in case anybody is planning on stalking me. But this was around that I really began to lean into the things people usually said about me. It was also the time that I started to write and post stories on the internet, mostly on forums. The two things worked better together than I could have ever imagined because my supposed insanity had a tendency to come out in humour ever since those first few playground laughs, and my natural sense of humour had been cultivated by my odd British family. Now, whether or not they are also insane can be left for a family psychologist to decide. But they introduced me to sarcasm through my mother's love of Terry Pratchett, which she read to me as a child, to complete randomness through my father's love of Douglas Adams, another not exactly bedtime story that I was exposed to, and to rudeness, thanks to my father's love of shouting at the radio whenever Gordon Brown was on the news. So naturally, I took all three of these things and put them into my stories. Through this questionable blend of uniqueness, I attracted an American audience because what I hadn't learned until then was that Americans don't appreciate sarcasm in the same way as us Brits do. Now, while most Brits will understand exactly what I mean when I say that somebody has a fun habit of cracking their knuckles, or that somebody who has been annoying me all day should have a wonderful week, most Americans will think that I either really enjoy horrible crunching noises or am incredibly forgiving. The fact that they were not used to when I did things meant that my ordinary everyday sarcasm was to them outlandish humour that justified my strange online names and kept them interested just long enough to keep them reading. Eventually, I moved away from usernames with crazy in them and from the forums I used to pose on. But I never did forget the value of embracing your own uniqueness, and I certainly didn't get any more normal. So if anybody's ever called you insane, I suggest that you find out why and embrace it to the fullest. And now it is my pleasure to introduce Stanley McCluskey and his speech, "No two breaks are the same." Stanley McCluskey, "No two breaks are the same."
Imagine it's a beautiful day. I'm riding my motorcycle to work. I'm reflecting on a conversation that I had with a colleague about her recent divorce and a broken heart when suddenly a car stops in front of me. My bike does not hit the car, thankfully. It hits the pavement, cushioned by my leg Ouch. My bike laid in one lane and I laid in another. I had single-handedly created a parking lot during rush hour traffic. Thank you. I tried to stand, but collapsed. Then an angel appeared. She had real wings. She was wearing a uniform of the United States Air Force. She looked at me. She said, "Sir, are you okay?" I said, "Yes, but check on my bike." She moves my motorcycle to the shoulder, bringing relief to me, but much more relief to the commuters. Then she rushed back to me. She says, "Sir, your baby is okay." I said, "Oh, thank you, sweet Jesus." But then my angel disappeared, replaced by a paramedic. He examined my leg. He said, "I can't see or feel any damage. Can you stand?" I said, "Well, let me try." Well, he helps me up, but I collapsed back to the ground. They load me in the ambulance. We speed off to the emergency room. The doctor looks at my x-ray. He said, "You have a unique break." I said, "Of course. I'm a unique guy." He didn't laugh. He said, "You will need surgery and you may lose control of your foot." What? I left in a wheelchair. Well, my wife looks at me and she says, "We're getting a second opinion." So we found Dr. Jones. When Dr. Jones looks at my MRI results, he said, "Your leg has a unique break. You will need surgery. You will be in a wheelchair for at least 3 months, then months of therapy." I look at my wife and think, we are not getting a third opinion. Well, I said, "I don't understand how a colleague at work was walking in 8 weeks after she broke her leg. I'm going to be in a wheelchair for 3 months and then months of therapy." He said, "No two breaks are the same." So no two breaks are the same. Well, as expected, after surgery, I spent 3 months in a wheelchair, 7 months in therapy. But after 10 long months, I was walking like my colleague. When I returned back to work, I saw my colleague who had a broke leg, as well as my colleague with a broken heart. And then it hit me, like me hitting that pavement. Whether it's a broken heart or a broken bone, Dr. Jones is right. No two breaks are the same. See, a broken heart and a broken bone, they both hurt. There's technology such as an X-ray machine that can provide you a visual assessment of a broken bone. Dr. Jones used medical technology to show me a picture of my broken leg, and it was not a pretty picture. A broken heart does not show up on an X-ray or an MRI. When the paramedic examined my leg, he could not see any damage. His way to assess my injury was how he stand on my broken leg. Well, he meant well, but it didn't help my broken leg. Well, people may often downplay your broken heart because they can't see the damage. So how do you assess a broken heart? Well-meaning friends? Well, just like I found the right doctor, the right therapist can provide you with a list of questions to help you understand your break. They can't measure it, No one can look at a broken heart and tell the person in 7 months, you're going to be all good. Now, why should this matter to you? Did the paramedic, could he tell that my leg was broken? No. I sought out proper medical attention and I got a proper diagnosis for my broken leg. With a broken heart, well-meaning friends can help, but you may want to seek out a professional to help you diagnose your broken heart. Get a proper diagnosis and start your journey toward healing. I can't even imagine what it would have been like had I not gotten a proper diagnosis for my broken leg. So whether it's a broken heart or a broken bone, no two breaks are the same. So now let's have some fun. Let's have some fun. I want you to look at your virtual neighbor. Look, you're not looking. Come on, look at your virtual neighbor. And I want you to repeat after me. No two breaks are the same. No two breaks are the same. Hey, I heard you. You were muted. I still heard you. Now look at me. Look at me. Now, when you leave today, what message are you going to spread? No two breaks are the same. As much as I enjoyed that speech, I am thrilled to welcome to the stage Katia Dean with her speech, Road to Web 3. Katia Dean, Road to Web 3.
Hi, everyone. My name is Katia. I'm going to share my journey into Web 3, and hopefully you all will get educated today and explore this exciting new industry. What are we going to cover today? Intro to Web 3, intro to blockchain, and my overall journey and how I started in Web 3. So what is Web 3? Web 3 is basically the evolution of the internet. It's the new phase where basically you will be able to own any of your content or anything that you create. As you can see here, Web 1, it was about basic pages. Web 2 is somewhere where we're in right now, where we have our LinkedIn, social media, and we basically do not own anything that we create. However, in Web 3, you will actually be able to own what you create. Some examples from Web 2 to Web 3. Right now, we currently use browsers. A Web 3 browser that we can use is Brave. We use storage right now, which is Google Drive or Dropbox, and we'll be able to use IPFs or Story. And intro to blockchain. Blockchain technology basically is a ledger where you'll be able to create your own things. So example here, and if anyone is out there in cybersecurity, this might look a little familiar, but how does the blockchain work? Well, Alice wants to send Bob some money. The transaction is on a block. The block is broadcast to all the networks. The network approves the transaction. The block is added to the existing blockchain, and then the transition is complete. Now that you all understood just the little basics of Web3 and blockchain, let me share my journey. So if anyone knows me, I do not like to code. I run away from code because it's just so difficult. So I said, let me get outside of my comfort zone and start to code. And once again, it was very intimidating, but I'm very proud of myself. So some things that I actually did to overcome my fear is that I enrolled into some more educational courses. So what have I created so far? I actually enrolled in the Odyssey Bootcamp, where I actually went through a game where I actually created my own cryptocurrency. So I have the Dean token that's out on the Polygon network. I also created about 14 smart contracts and decentralized applications. And I also enrolled in Learn Web3 DAO, which is basically an organization for Web3 developers. And so far, I went through the freshman track and the sophomore track, where I created decentralized applications. I created a few websites using Solidity, React, and Next.js. I also took it upon myself to get some certifications because I always try to be ahead of the game. But what is my overall journey and what do I really want to become in Web3? I actually want to become a developer relations advocate, or sometimes it's called a developer advocate. And that's basically someone who is connecting the developer community with software products. So a little bit something that I'm already doing right now, but it's like very exciting, and the Web3 space is exciting. So hopefully today I was able to share with you all a little piece of some new technology that you all will explore in the future. And if you want to connect with me, you could catch me on Twitter at KTSCylife, or also connect with me on LinkedIn. And I'm so excited to introduce the new guest, Tom Bishop with Never Burn Bridges, because who wants to burn any bridges out there? So once again, Tom Bishop with Burning Bridges.
Thank you, Katia. Never burn bridges. After I retired from the Navy, I wanted to do something with my son that would benefit him and his future, because I was absent from his life for so long while I was serving. About 6 years ago, we did our bachelor's degree in computer networking and cybersecurity. And that worked out so well that we completed our master's degrees in cybersecurity management and policy. Today, we both work for the same company, doing the same job, a dream of every father. 3 years ago, after getting my degree in the field, breaking the chain was the task at hand. I took that leap and changed careers after 31 years in aviation. This was the best decision ever made. I've learned so many new things over the last 3 years about bringing inner greatness out and personal branding. This amazing community has showed me that building your personal brand and promoting yourself, you have a better chance at getting your dream job and being compensated appropriately. I'm living proof of this. I've almost doubled my annual salary since I started my new job. I can sit here and tell you it's not all about the money, but I will also sit here and tell you that it sure does help. When you're looking for a new job, changing careers, changing jobs in the same company, or even working for a different company, don't burn your bridges. My current employer, they actually turned me down the first time I applied with them. They held on to my resume because I did not burn that bridge. 1 year later, they called me and asked me if I had time to come in for an interview. The shift into cybersecurity had begun. When you're building your profile on platforms like LinkedIn or Mastodon, be honest and be prepared to back up what you've said. Faking it until you make it, it'll only get you so far. Be confident you can perform the job that you're applying for. Remember, imposter syndrome, yeah, it's real. You need to know what it is and realize that you are capable, and be confident in yourself and your abilities. At the same time, be humble enough to ask for help if you need it. There is no shame in asking for help. And our community is here for you. Even though you get the job that you consider your dream job, it's never a guarantee. Economies change, outlooks change, missions change, so you can't depend on that. If you burn bridges, there's nowhere to fall back to. Currently, I receive anywhere from 15 to 30 job opportunities a week. And I never get mad with the recruiters. There have been times that I've seen people get upset with them because they interrupted them and blindly turned them away. And sometimes they kind of get nasty with them. Why do that when they could be the next person to find your new dream job? A better way to do this would be explain to them you're happy in your current role. If that changes, you'll reach out to them. Most of the time, the response is one of two things. That would be great, keep in touch. Or would you happen to know someone that would be interested in this opportunity? Many times, there's a finder's fee for finding someone to fill that position. This could be a nice side hustle. That is a much better place to leave the conversation. You never know when things are going to go badly, so prepare for that. And now, I am thrilled to invite Emma Jean to the stage with the speech, The Author's Lottery Ticket. Emma Jean, The Author's Lottery Ticket.
Thank you so much for introducing me, Tom. I am so excited to share this story with you all. I am branded as Emma Jean Author, but you will learn that actually when you do that whole bring inner greatness thing out, and you're just open to whatever shows up, a lot of things can change really quickly. And so sometimes you have to figure out how you're branded as an author and yet suddenly run a talent management agency. So that's kind of the problem I'm solving for right now. And I heard once that, like, if you're doing stand-up comedy, a callback is like a really important thing to layer into your act. And although I truly hope that life never asks me to do stand-up comedy, I'm going to tell you a little story here. And that is that my books are on a website, forpigstofly.com. And so, like, I'm always going to people like, yeah, you can find me at like 4pigs2fly, because my dreams were so big that people told me pigs would fly before they came true. So a little bit like find that insanity thing and really hold on to it that you just heard about. Like, yeah, that's real, because people thought my dreams were just crazy big to exist, too big to be allowed. But at the same time, people actually did believe in me as an author, which is kind of crazy to begin with. Like when you're a little kid and you're going around being like, yeah, I'm gonna be a famous author one day. And it gets even weirder when your high school teachers start saying, that's fine, don't take the test, write us a story instead. We want to see what you can write for us about this topic. And then it gets weirder when you go to college and your professors do the same thing. And all of a sudden, everyone's asking for your work. And everyone is just saying, when you grow up, you're going to be an author. Like, it's a real thing that you can become, because everyone sees it in you. This is who you're supposed to be. So I always say I bought my author's lottery ticket at 14 years old. That's when I started writing my first book. That's when I started studying the querying process. That's when I learned how literary agents worked. And I learned that to become an author, you do one thing and you do it perfectly. And that is you, one, write an entire book, as in done, perfect, ready for publication. Then you pay money, send it to an editor. That editor reads your book, edits it, tells you all the spots where it's wrong. You fix all those spots. Then you take that book and you write a perfect query letter. Because let me tell you, if you write a bad query letter, as in you get the rules wrong, it doesn't matter if you are literally better than Shakespeare. They're not reading your letter, won't even look at it, automatically delete it. So I do this for 10 years. And every time I cross the threshold of like, hey, I just got nothing but rejections, no interest whatsoever, I said, time to write a new book. And so at this point, 10 years down the road, I have about 5 books just in my metaphorical, my locker right there, just all my books sitting there. And I am a failure. There is no other word that I use to describe myself than failure. I got a master's degree, have a real job, like all this stuff. I failed. I can't live with myself. This was what I was supposed to become, and it wasn't happening. And then I get a challenge that I wouldn't have believed. And it was try something different one time. Try a different way. And I thought, like, how can I do this? How can I try something completely different? There is only one way. And so yet I decide to do the thing that I've always said I won't do, because then you're not a real author. I self-publish. And it turns out I'm really good at branding. And I grow a massive platform on Instagram. At the same time, I self-publish a book that was designed to be perfect on purpose. It matched every single thing they said to do. It matched the supply chains. It matched the comps. This is the book. It's Charles McCheese and the Childhood News Network. And it actually became a #1 bestseller on Amazon twice when I self-published knowing nothing. At which point I move over to Twitter and I say, I'm going to grow my second platform where all the writers are. And they're all there because the agents have this thing called Pit Mad. And it's this giant war where you basically, to get a little mark that you can put on your query that you were invited, you go to war with the writing community and you try to be the winner. And it hurts, let me tell you. Like, it is hard and painful and terrible. And all you're hoping for is one agent to press a heart button on one tweet. And that's when I find this guy, Dave Westfall. And all he does is introduce people to Twitter's writing community. He's introduced 40,000 people. That's when I see it. 40,000 people that I know have done it right. They have bought the author's lottery ticket and they are waiting in line. At which point I start screaming, get out of line. You're in a 40,000 person line. You're dying in this line. Get out of line. And I start telling every writer I can find. And I'm not the only one telling every writer they can find. Dr. Hasib and I have talked about this. What's going on in the writing community? Why won't they change? Why won't anyone hear us? And they're all locked in this dream. And I happen to have my second job was in psychology, at which point I know that the most addictive thing to human minds that is not drugs is randomized returns and randomized incentives, which means every time someone wins the lottery, they get the agent, they get the dream deal, every person in that line becomes a little bit more addicted to waiting. And so not too long ago, I was on a Zoom call with someone that I was interviewing, and behind me, I had all my logos and they were the flying pigs. And she goes, sorry, it's so hard to concentrate because all behind you, there are pigs flying. And I said, I guess it's working. At which point I did what you're supposed to do, which is I took the job that everyone asked me to take. And I started my own talent management agency. And I have just representing all these people that don't need me at all, because they all figured out how to walk a different path as well. And then we're all linked up now. And that is kind of where I'm like, if you're waiting in a giant line, don't buy the lottery ticket, don't fall for it, because where I stand now, I have 40,000 peers and I'm the only one in the room. Just walk a different way. And with that, I am so thrilled to introduce to you the wonderful Nathan Van Wake and his speech, The Phoenix Inside. Here's Nathan Van Wake with The Phoenix Inside.
Tell me, what is it you see here? Is it a matchstick? If you had to say it was a matchstick, I would agree with you, but I would also disagree with you, right? Why? What we're actually looking at over here is a potential forest fire that could burn down thousands of hectares of forest. Or we could look at a flame that lights a gas stove over there that feeds a family for an evening. That is what we're looking at. What we're actually looking at is potential. And how we apply that potential is what makes the difference in life. Now, when I talk about the phoenix within, I speak about the potential that lies within all of us. Now, that potential, it can be the gift and the curse of humanity. It depends upon how we apply it. Now, why do I equate the phoenix with that sort of potential? Well, to understand that, we need to actually look into the myth of the phoenix. We know that it's an immortal bird of fire that lives forever. But we also hear the stories of that it's born from the ash. Now, the true story in this instance is that the phoenix is born from the ashes of its previous life, meaning that it can go ahead and choose its own way from the life that it used to have. And that's where my story comes in. I've changed careers 5 times. I used to be an electrician. I went into lecturing. I then was a electronic technician, and now I'm a software tester, and I'm beginning to move into cybersecurity. That's 5 different times that I've reset my life over there because I see a different potential. Now, for the second part of this that we need to understand over there is the phoenix itself is made of flame. Now, the important part of that is not the fact that it's made of flame, but a fire produces light. Light has been with humanity ever since we have walked this earth, and we have used it in many different ways. We use the light for illuminating the dark. We use the light for navigation. We've navigated with the stars ever since we've known ships. We use the light for, as a throwback to Valentine's Day, romance. This is what we use our light for. And by igniting ourselves and our inner passions and the potential that we have within, we unconsciously ignite a light that for others to follow, for others to be secure around, for others to feel comfort within. That is the light. And no matter what we might think to ourselves, it is within all of us. We like to say to ourselves that there's no potential within me, like this empty matchbox. How could I hold anything within it? It's a lie that we tell ourselves, obviously. The main evidence for this is actually around when we get mad or angry that somebody has hurt us. There's no way that we don't feel that light, or we don't feel that way, because we actually do feel potential in ourselves. Somehow in our subconscious over there, that anger, that sadness that we feel when somebody hurts us over there is because we do see value in ourselves. And we need to apply that every single day, that lesson, every single day of our lives. Or otherwise it just won't make a difference. Now, we may think that we're like this empty matchbox, and we think that there's no potential within us. But perhaps if we look just a little bit deeper, the phoenix may lie within us after all. Thank you. And with that, I will hand over to Felicia Newton with her speech, When Your Enemy is the Enemy. Felicia, with Your Enemy is Your Enemy. Felicia, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. A pleasant good morning to all of you. It is indeed awesome to be at this conference. It's been so amazing so far. Thank you, Dr. Hasib, my mentor, for this opportunity to grace your platform. I'd like to dive right in. You know, growing up, I just believed that I could be anything that I wanted to be. A teacher, a doctor, an electrician. I wanted to be a preacher. Growing up in the Bahamas, I went to church more days than I can actually count. I went to 2 to 3 services on a Sunday. There was Monday prayer meeting, Wednesday Bible study, Friday youth meeting, Saturday choir rehearsal, just to do it again Sunday. Furthermore, I actually enjoyed going to church and reading my Bible. My heart was fixed. I was going to be a preacher. And everyone around me, they knew this. My desire to preach was not far-fetched. It did not seem insurmountable, neither unachievable. This was a self-induced thought born out of my womb of faith, and there were no competing internal voices attempting to dissuade me. Or were there? On the one hand, I had, Felicia, you can do it. There's nothing stopping you. Go for it. But on the other hand, there was this nagging voice that said, there is nobody in your family that has done this before. Furthermore, you don't even have the resources to go to seminary. How is this even possible? As I grew older, my focus, it readjusted. My paradigms, they shifted. And the externalities of self-doubt and self-sabotage, they weighed in, and I started to drown. I later learned that this was a phenomenon called imposter syndrome. And this is where a person experienced feeling like a phony in some area of their life, even though they had had previous success. Somehow, beknownst to me, I had been feeding an internal force that had now matured and was stronger than ever. There was a war waging. This was a battle that I was not prepared for. The enemy had been discovered to be in a part of the enemy, and it spoke louder and clearer and consistent about my lack and my limitations. I was no longer driven, motivated, inspired, ambitious, or fearless. My faith had now become obscure. There were internal voices that were incessantly informing my course of actions. I eventually gave in. I was no longer the victor I believed myself to be. The enemy inside of me dictated that I was to be the victim. I no longer spoke of my accomplishments as winnings, but from a place of whining. My L's were now losses and not lessons learned. My enemy had become so overwhelmingly powerful and monstrous and destructive, and the internal fight to divide asunder self from self was seemingly impossible. The uphill battle of me versus me, the realization that my enemy had become my enemy, was cannibalistic at its core. I felt defeated, hopeless, helpless, stuck, slowly dying. But see, that's not how my story ends. There is actually good news. My saving grace was the tenets of those who believed in me, the faith of those around me. They had encouraged me and lifted up my bowed head. Those were the folks that had planted seeds of hope and faith in some time past. Their words were now started to take root. I started to believe in me again. I started to internalize the positives I had heard. I paid attention to the voices within that were speaking differently from what I wanted my truth to be. I started visualizing myself in a better place, financially, new employment, new circle of people who mirrored where I wanted to be, showing up at engagements, networking, affirming myself. Shh. Do you hear that? The deafening silence was the lowered voice of my enemy. Almost as if none existed, I had finally lowered the amplification of my enemy's voice and reinforced that enemy from childhood who believed all things were possible. Things started to fall in place, almost as if coincidentally. I started to dream again, but this time with great intentionality. I envisioned those things I desired, and as I saw them, they actually came to be. One of my greatest accomplishments, once I learned to lower the voice of my enemy, was meeting Dr. Hasib. You see, I had listened to the enemy tell me that I did not have what it took to complete my degree program, so why bother? I danced to this tune until the last 2 weeks of my first semester, when I realized procrastination was waving its victory flag. There was no way I was going to be able to complete 11 weeks worth of work in 2 weeks while working full-time. I remember being on campus and crying because I lost. I lost time. I lost finances and a sense of self. Why did I bring myself to such shame? This was the day that I convinced me to quit. I packed up my belongings and made my way to the vending machine for that final goodbye snack. And guess who was walking by? Dr. Hasib. Talk about an on-time intervention. I got to telling him about the challenges that I had actually brought upon myself, but was not brave enough to tell him that I quit. Dr. Hasib listened and helped me come up with a plan to complete and submit all of my past due assignments on time, but more importantly, a prevention plan for the remaining semesters. Fast forward, I stayed attuned and sought help when needed. I felt stronger and inspired and faith-filled because deep down, I wanted to successfully complete the program, and things and people started to fall in alignment. I completed the program, earned my second graduate degree, was introduced to two highly esteemed folks who would later be mentors at a job that I had envisioned, but really had no concrete proof that this was going to be my reality. Shh. Do you hear that? I figured out how to turn the volume down on the enemy. And as I get ready to pass this virtual mic, I'd like to leave you with a few reminders. You cannot separate you from you. However, when your enemy rises up and it feels like it's now your enemy, you have all control to subdue it. Pay attention to those feelings. They are usually the manifestation of your thoughts. What are you telling you? What are you thinking about? What are you believing about you that you know is untrue? Third and lastly, amplify your positive thoughts. Affirm yourself, look in the mirror and say your name and say you can achieve anything that you focus your time and energy towards. You are first in command and you can control the volume of the negative chatter. I want to thank you for your time and attention. And I am so honored to introduce our next guest, Jesse Qurollo, as he presents on the anatomy of a successful failure. Jesse Qurollo, Anatomy of a Successful Failure. Thank you.
Thank you, Felicia. So very well said in your message and on my last name. Thank you. The anatomy of a successful failure. A fallen swing with broken chain no longer serves relaxing gain. The break, the drop, inflicted pain, all that see behold this bane. It's now a heap of tangled mess, incomplete connectedness. Now implies it's something less, it's future bleak left to guess. Succeed and fail? Contradiction? That's commonplace intuition. Instead of and, it should be or. Correct me now or say no more. Succeed and fail don't seem to mix. So I thought there is no fix. You cannot build with broken sticks. The same is true of crumbled bricks. Succeed, fail, obvious view. Was for me, same for you. What I had planned, I tried to do. I fell short, yes, but true. Succeed or fail, you took a chance. Invested effort to advance. Surely something to enhance, perhaps to win a pleasing glance. I read a book, I thought I'd try, but disappointments made me cry. Losing steam, deflating sigh. I want to quit, I will not lie. Success is glad, and failure sad. One seems good, and one seems bad. One says, hey, I'm now a grad. A failure says, I could have had. The surface doesn't show it all. We feel as though we dropped the ball, hampered by a blocking wall, fallen down, no longer tall. Another word to think about, dissolving needless, endless doubt, allowing us to figure out, could make us stronger, much more stout. Anatomy articulates, demonstrates, and educates. Understanding what relates, helps connect, facilitates. All things holding a design, possess no purpose to resign. Each must go and not decline, a greater purpose to align. For example, what to cook? A recipe is worth a look. This and that, a bit we took from directions in the book. Now I see that things are made, instructions followed and obeyed. As music that is sweetly played, strict attention has been paid. Be careful with a package deal, assessing closely to reveal. Imaginations make you feel all is wasted, just repeal. A broken link steals the show. When it fails, all will know. The other links did not go, only one saddened woe. Epiphany, this I thought. Now I see what I've been taught. All the links a battle fought, only one became distraught. Portraying life now in view, a lesson learned for me and you, a clearer vision what to do, experience and working through. Many links are chain of life. Some bring peace, others strife. Each unique, none the same. It all begins with your name. Much of life anticipate, a time to go, a time to wait. Turns and curves, sometimes straight. Think and do, be someone great. Avoid despising little things, as feathers are to flapping wings. Greatness in most everything. Look again, keep practicing. Find what failed, that broken link. Once you're there, you're on the brink. That one small piece should cause to think, we will not fail, we will not sink. Although unpleasant, search to find the broken piece, it seems unkind. You will assure and calm your mind. Success and failure are combined. As we approach the time to close, this simple poem lacking prose, nonetheless, it's what I chose to share with you and disclose. Purpose in life is the core to something bigger, something more. Find that reason, I implore. Unleash, develop, all in store. Despite each analogy having weaknesses of its own, I would like for you to consider your life as a chain made up of many links. Each link represents something beneficial in your life. It might be something physical, something emotional, something tangible, something intangible, an opportunity, an attempt, or an accomplishment. But each chain is unique in its structure and its purpose, and ultimately in its greatness. Some chains are physically strong but lack the charming presentation. Others may be fragile and delicate, but more physically appealing than their utilitarian counterparts. Think of a jewelry chain versus a machinery chain. And over the course of time, each of us will experience at the very least one broken link. It's both common and reasonable to expect several broken links in our lifetime. Sometimes that link may be action or inaction on our part. At other times, we may be directly or indirectly affected by someone else's action or inaction. And that's okay, because you and I are now better prepared to look beyond the superficial appearances and consider the anatomy of a successful failure. Thank you. Please welcome our next speaker. It's my privilege to introduce Karla Reffold with the speech, Authentic and Effective Networking.
Well, firstly, hi, Dad. I can see that you're watching. But I'm going to start with a little story about how being authentic has worked for me. So I lived in America for about 9 months, most of which have been, all but 2 weeks have been during the pandemic. So we have been stuck at home and I hadn't had a chance to meet anyone. So I sent a message to a group of people all within cybersecurity like me, a more eloquent version of "Will you be my friend?" It said, you know, I've lived here for a very short amount of time and haven't been able to meet anybody and would like to get to know more people. I've picked people in cybersecurity, so maybe there's a personal or a work benefit to the conversation. And please save me from having to join the PTA in order to meet more people. So I had quite a few calls from that, some of which were great. Some of those people I haven't really kept in touch with, some of whom have gone on to provide me reference letters for my visa application. About a year later, I met somebody who said, hey, did you remember sending me this message a year or so ago? Because I thought it was very weird. It made you sound like you were committing some sort of scam. I thought maybe you were a mail order bride. So at that point, I thought, well, at least I have a second career option. And that conversation was great, but the relationship didn't really move anywhere after that. And that taught me a really great lesson, that message I sent was very authentic to me, and that the people that were right responded to it, and the people that were maybe wrong and were not really going to connect with me properly anyway had weeded themselves out. And so being authentic in how you're approaching your networking, that really cemented for me that that's the only way you can do it properly. So right now I'm mentoring somebody who is looking to build her network because she wants to move roles. And the first thing that I've told her to do, because networking feels like such a big thing to approach and such a difficult thing to undertake and to start to build, is to make a list. Just really simple, make a list of who she wants to get to know. And that for her has felt like a very achievable thing that she can do. After she's made the list, the next thing she needs to do is work out why she wants to talk to them, what's in it for her, but then what's in it for them. And sometimes you might not be able to think of that. I've certainly approached people and said, I want to meet you for these reasons, and I hope that there's something in it for you, but I can't tell you what that is right now. If you can work out what that is and to put that in the message, then I think that's great. But if you can't, then just being open about it has really worked for me. And then the most important part of this is how you keep in touch with them. So I never wanted to have a spreadsheet of people that I was connected to, because it felt very impersonal for such a personal thing to do. But it has become very difficult to keep in touch as proactively and as thoroughly as I would want to. So I've bitten the bullet and have a spreadsheet of those people to make sure I'm talking to them every quarter. But keeping in touch is the really vital part to this process. I spend about an hour a week talking to people that approach me. I set aside that time. So I speak to 2 or 3 people a week that are new. I can think of one person that has continued to keep in touch with me for probably 2 years now. Just one out of all those people that have taken the time and the courage to approach me and ask me for some time and hopefully something valuable. And most of them then don't follow up and don't continue to reach out. And that's where the value really comes. So another little story about being in America, I moved 2 weeks later, the pandemic started and everyone had to stay home, and we lost 85% of our clients in a week. So needless to say, that didn't quite work out how I had envisaged it. And I needed to find a new job a few months after that. I did what everybody does and applied to jobs online. I applied to over 100 roles and received nothing. No interviews, not even any responses, as most of you will have experienced yourself, I'm sure. But I also spoke to the people that I knew in my network and told them what I was looking for. 3 people made 3 introductions, and I got 2 job offers from those 3 introductions. The difference in how the value that comes from that network is so significant. But you can't build it when you need it. It has to be built continuously, and you can't dip in and out of it when you need it and when you need something. It has to be something that you approach with true authenticity, genuine connections that you then want to maintain and want to keep going throughout your career. And I really believe that you can't just build a network for your own benefit. That's why, like I mentioned, I spend time talking to those people every week, people where right now, there's no obvious benefit to me giving up my time. But I really believe that if I'm giving up my time because somebody feels like there's some benefit to them, then ultimately that's going to come back to me. And I can't expect people that I want to speak to and that I hope will give up their time for me if I'm not prepared and willing to do that for other people. And then the last thing for me is really how you let that personality shine through as much as possible. So I'm very active on LinkedIn, and one of the things that I do every week is talk about what it's like to be British in America. I've been doing this for a year, pointing out all the weird different things about England and America. So, and I've got plenty more to go, which tells you exactly how many weird things there are that are very different for two countries that speak supposedly the same language. So pick something. It could be anything. I know people that talk about rock climbing and dogs and yoga and all sorts of different things. They pick one little thing that is relevant to them as a person rather than to their careers or what they're selling or what they want to be known for, because it allows people to feel like they know you. And if they know you and they know the real you, because you're putting out your actual personality and not your work brand or your work personality, then I think you see significantly different results. So hopefully those stories and anecdotes have been useful and maybe made you smile a little bit too. And I am now very pleased to introduce Jim Larsen, who is going to talk about accepting greatness.
I want to show you something. Look at this. I hope it says on the bottom here, it says world's best at this. I'm here, world SM Larsen. Yes, of all the people in this world who are named Jim Larsen, I am the, and I did about and have this trophy to prove it. And it's not for nothing that either that I have this trophy. I had to earn this. I had to earn this by being really, really great. And be the best of who you are too. Easy. And I will tell you how to achieve that. You achieve that by being open to the inspirations that come your way. Is the blueprint of greatness. Accepting inspirations as they come without balking at them or saying, nah, that's a bad idea. That would never work. I can't do that. And that's saying, yes, that is brilliant. I love that idea. And then accepting and then doing something with it. To do that, to accept your inspirations is your ticket to your own greatness. Let me give you an example of what I mean by this and why I have this trophy, World Jim Larsen. Let me give you an example. Look at this. Look at this. I'm trying. Look at this long and hard. I guess this chroma key isn't going so well. This is a butt crack. This is sticking out of somebody's pants. Butt crack sticking out of somebody's pants in the fashion known as plumber's crack. This person has no sense of himself and is completely oblivious to the fact that he has a problem. Imagine this. You are with your friends, laughing, joking around, having a good time, and just simply enjoying the simple enjoyments of life. When all of a sudden, out of nowhere, this is in your face. Sorry, it was upside down. This is in your face, and there's nothing you can do about it. What do? I have experienced this. It was during my freshman year in college back in 1988 when I was a freshman in Montana State University, living in a dorm in Bozeman, Montana. So many times my friends and I would be gathered to have some fun and just enjoy life, just to enjoy company. joke around, play games, talk, whatever. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, there it was, the butt crack. The omnipresent butt crack. Every time you turned around, there it was, staring at you in your face. The sight of it was not for the faint of heart. So many people could not take it. Oh, they dreaded the thought that it would show up at a gathering in the common area or somebody's room, wherever we're just trying to cards or have fun, whatever we were doing. And geez, with just cause too, this dread, this fear, this horrible feeling that everybody had was for a reason. It was a very sociable butt crack. It was very genial and easygoing. I say it, well, like the butt crack was some free floating entity among it. But of course, I mean, there's anatomy attached to. I'll call him Wade struck both and dread in the heart of so many of my dorm mates. The dread that he would ruin a get-together with his butt crack was palpable and existed with just cause because he usually did. While this caused quite a lot of anger and feelings of with me of my dorm mates, I took the funniest I'd ever life. I mean, think about it. How could you not laugh at something like this? How on earth can be so utterly clueless that they're sticking out of their pants, not realizing the effect that that is having on those around? It's just blew mind, and I couldn't understand nothing, because to me it was just so funny. As I pondered this, two things occurred to me. Somebody ought to write a story about this guy, and the name of that story should be Butt Crack. Two, I thought somebody should be me. So I did. Wrote a screenplay, and I titled that screenplay Butt Crack, using this guy as inspiration. A few years later, I'm back home in Virginia. I'm not going to school in Montana anymore. And I had a chance to direct screenplay with a somewhat popular star in a pivotal role. The finished film was Trauma Entertainment, still has a cult following to this day. And to this day, people are finding me on Facebook and Twitter, and they're telling me how much they love this film and enjoyed it, and actually inspires them to make movies. And they've shared some of these movies with me. And I love the fact that what had inspired them to find their great touches me, and really appreciate that. But would any of this have happened had I not found inspiration in that crack? If I had just so uptight and rigid? No, it wouldn't have. So I discovered then and inspiration in the cracks. That is where it's truly found. It's sometimes it's obvious, comes as other times it comes from the tiniest. Most people don't look finding inspiration in cracks, and is the that lead you to greatness, your ticket to greatness. So with this crack as my news, I found inspiration to my own personal greatness. And I encourage each and every one of you to use cracks as your muse. Find it within the small places that will capture your own personal greatness. Whenever you see, whenever you're inspired, wherever it comes from, use that as your ticket to greatness. And now I am very pleased to invite Dr. Tami Erickson to the stage with her speech, Leading by Sticky Notes. Dr. Tami Erickson, Leading by Sticky Notes.
All right. Well, thank you so much with finding your inner greatness in cracks. That was fantastic. So I am pleased to be here once again. So thank you for inviting me, Dr. Hasib. So I met Dr. Hasib, it seems like many moons ago, but it's probably just a couple of years ago. At one of his podcasts, my friend says, oh my gosh, I'm going to present at Dr. Hasib's and nobody's going to show up. And I'm like, really? So I showed up and really, no one's going to show up to Dr. Hasib's? Well, I had no idea even who he was back then. But, you know, the whole idea is that you just show up. And then so I showed up, but I became a regular. I was there every single week. And so, you know, it's great to show up every single week, but he becomes addicting. Yeah, Dr. Hasib does become addicting. I'm sure there are several of you here that'll agree with me. And so then he says, what are you doing? What are you writing all the time? And I said, I'm writing things that you say. And he's all, well, what are you writing? Like, tell me about it. And I said, no, I'm not telling you what I'm writing. And his face was like, what are you doing? You're not telling me what you're writing? And I said, no. I think it's the first time anybody ever told Dr. Hasib no. And I said, well, I'll make you a deal. You have me on one of your podcasts. After all, I'm a regular. I should get that honor. And I will make these sticky notes because that's what I'm doing. I'm writing sticky notes. I have a few from today. And I'll put them together and then I'll share them with you. I have to kind of be prepared. No, your podcast, you say you're not prepared. So we did the podcast and I actually shared my sticky notes with him. And he was unprepared. And it was a great podcast. You can find it. It was a few years ago on his YouTube site. So we went through this process and it was great. And somehow I was dubbed the sticky note, hashtag sticky notes. You can find that somewhere as well. I don't know where it exists anymore either in the world, but it was kind of fun for a little while. But then somehow I got written up in his book. Yeah, see, look, there's even a sticky note on that. So that was a lot of fun as well. So moving right along, that didn't go, you know, we continued this sticky note thing for a while. And after one of the first conferences, yes, you can find that on his YouTube somewhere else. And I am known as a bit of everything. And I'm also known for having many hats. And I became the princess, or maybe the queen, I'm not so sure, of sticky notes. Funny how that is. As we go, I have lots of hats. My company is called Bit of Everything. I have lots of hats that I wear. So, moving on with some of the real pieces of sticky notes. It is a method that I've used for a long time. I'm not sure when it started, but I call it the sticky note method, and I've taught it to many people. And basically, it's writing down words of wisdom from other people. And these other people could be people that I meet anywhere. Everyone has words of wisdom for you. I write words of wisdom from people that I meet in the grocery store. It's unfortunate that all of our groceries these days come from online, right? You order it, you never have people that you meet anymore. Not me. I still stand in line and talk to people. It could come from people at your church. Who knows? It could even come from your kids. It's amazing what comes out of the kids' mouths. So it could come from books, but I write them on sticky notes and I put them on my desk. And I practice them for about 2 weeks, and then I throw them in a box. or in a drawer or wherever I keep sticky notes. I put the sticky notes on my desk. Sometimes they're on the table. Sometimes they will be hung up on cabinets for my husband to remember, because he also gets sticky notes. My mom gets sticky notes. I make sure that everyone in the house who needs words of wisdom gets sticky notes. Not that they appreciate them as much as I do. Now, when I did this presentation for Dr. Hasib, my friends attended and they said, oh, we know she really does sticky notes because she used to do them for us. We also know they're real because they're full of cat hair, some kitty litter, maybe some food, tape. They're crunkled up, so we know she uses them. The two that I'm working on this week, just to let you know that they're real. The first one says that it's okay to say no. Now, be careful with that. You should not say no to your mama. Careful with that. That could get you in trouble. You should not say no to your daddy. That could also get you in trouble. Careful with your significant others. That could get you in trouble too. But I'm trying to work on saying no to some extra projects. I'm getting used to saying no to people like Dr. Hasib and, working out a balance of how it should occur. Just because somebody wants it doesn't mean that it's appropriate to give them, right? We're talking about uniqueness and appropriateness here on this. And I'm also working on one thing at a time. All of the leadership books and leadership things that I've been doing all this time is about multitasking. CEOs and those around me have said, you really shouldn't multitask. Multitask is a really, really bad thing. When employees come to you, they want your attention. They want to tell you what's wrong. They want to tell you what they feel, what they need. If you as a manager, boss, leader, etc., are busy typing on the computer, texting, they feel put aside. They don't feel like they're getting what they need. You need to put those aside and do one thing at a time, and that's focus on the need of the person in front of you. So I'm practicing one thing at a time. So I wasn't kidding about sticky notes. So I'm shaking them up. These are some of the most recent ones I pulled out. There's no particular order. So we're just going to I'll try to keep my commentary aside, but that's really hard for me. If anybody knows, I'm a storyteller, so who knows what you get. All right, let's see some of these words of wisdom. Oh, this one I think we've heard. Don't stop dreaming. I think we've heard some of that today. It's words of wisdom. Oh, here's one. No repeating the rule. This is mine. Cannot bring me the same complaints without bringing suggestions. It drives me crazy. This one used to be on everyone's desk when I had staff, because you cannot come to me with a complaint or an issue if you do not have at least some sort of solution. I don't care what your solution is. You can make up whatever solution you want. Don't care if it's right or wrong, but come up with something. I mean, come on now. I'm teaching you how to be innovators. This is kind of on that line. Be part of the solution. I don't know, make up a solution. Again, it doesn't have to be right or wrong. I don't care. Oh, this one's Dr. Hasib. And I think Karla just talked about it. Building relationships. Most of the blue with the green are Dr. Hasib's, because it was during that time. So thank you, Dr. Hasib. You got to build the relationships. Reinvent yourself or perish. I think Tom Bishop talked about that. Someone talked about they're on their 5th job. You do have to invent yourself from time to time. You've got to keep up with the changing of the times. Oh, this might be a good one for self-help. And Dr. Hasib, you can cut me off when I hit my 7 minutes, because I do have a box. Everyone wants to have a legacy. What's your legacy? What are you leaving behind? Oh, here's one, Dr. Hasib. Remember this one? You are as smart as your network. What's on Dr. Hasib? Oh, give deadlines. So if you have employees or work with employees, giving deadlines, I'm really bad about that. I like to let them make their own deadlines. Don't forget the why. Don't forget where you came from. Don't forget why you do something. Oh, the CEO is the brand. Oh, there you go, right? Dr. Hasib. It's got to come from somewhere. See, they're all stuck together, got cat fur. You have to bring it all out to move it forward. If you're not bringing yourself, you're not bringing it forward. Oh, this is one that obviously I did from the car. Helping people. You've got to help people. Tailor your strategies to your total organization. Organization will fail if you're doing your own thing. Create trust. I just was reading Stephen Covey again, and that's in there. You have to set the example. Is it your choice or is it someone else's choice? I think we've talked about that you need to do what you need to do, not what others expect of you. Oh, this is mine. I did one. What does sick look like? What does sick look like? So some of you have been a regular, know this about me. Some of the new people, maybe not. I'm a type 1 diabetic, and I have several other diseases that go along with that. But probably with y'all looking at me, you probably didn't know that I'm sick. I could be sick in a whole bunch of other ways too, but we won't talk about that. Seek in yourself and then take action. Let me know, Dr. Hasib. Have I hit my 7 minutes? Have I?
You can close anytime you want.
Oh, well, is anybody bored? Oh, devil in the details. Culture breeds itself. Oh, don't blame. All right. We can play with these sticky notes later, but, just try a sticky note. Somebody says something that you're like, aha. Write it down. Try it for a couple of weeks. See if it changes your world. And with that, Dr. Hasib, thank you so much for having me again this time. I'll turn it back to you.
That was awesome. Look at that. We just showcased 13 amazing people, every one of them unique, and every one of them has embraced their inner greatness and revealed an aspect of themselves to you. You can see anybody can do that. And that is how we connect with people. And now, with that, we will open up the floor and I will close the recording. So let's turn on everybody's microphones, give our speakers a round of applause, and I will turn on the gallery view so that you will be seen. All right.
Yay, thank y'all so very much.